Hello, everyone. We're going to be talking about junior developers. My name is Yasna Todorovic. I work for Intraxon, makers of Muse, the Brain Sensing headband, which is a wearable technology headband that you wear that gives you real-time feedback on what your brain is doing. The main consumer offering is for meditation, so it's able to tell you whether you're leaving a meditative state or not. We also have an open SDK, so you can build your own stuff on it. This talk has nothing to do with that, but I just like to talk about it whenever. It's the coolest thing, so if you want to, if you want to know more about it.
I want one.
You should buy one.
Did you bring one?
I did not.
Did your hair turn that color from
I'm not at liberty to say.
That's cool too.
Right, so actually, so I'm a software developer at Intraxon, and I spent about a year working at Lighthouse Labs, which is a boot camp in Toronto. So I got to see, I was a mentor there, and I got to see hundreds of students kind of going through that process and going into their first jobs or not going into their first jobs. And I've also worked with a bunch of junior developers, so over time I've kind of developed a lot of opinions on the right and wrong ways to do things. So why would you want to hire a junior developer? Because in general, if you want something done, if you get an intermediate or a senior person, they'll be able to kind of start working on it right away. With junior, you have to teach them. So why would you actually want to hire a junior developer? First of all, senior people are very hard to find, good ones at least. Having 10 years of experience in software does not make you a senior developer, it just makes you someone who has 10 years of experience in software. So it's actually very difficult to find senior people who have the skills that you want, in the way that you want, and the attitude that you want to fit in with your team, and who aren't jaded or who aren't like too opinionated in their own ways that they can adapt to your own team. It's difficult. The most obvious one, of course, is that junior developers are, in general, going to be cheaper than anyone with more experience. And I think this is probably the biggest reason that companies hire junior developers, which is fine. It's a perfectly valid reason. This one's a little more subtle, but I actually think that it's really important that it helps foster an environment of learning for everyone. So if you have, let's say, 5 developers on your team or something, and they're all intermediate and senior, if you're not already trying to foster a development of learning and asking questions and things like that, it might not exist. And so these people might be just kind of working on their own. They're not going to be asking each other a lot of questions, not learning from each other. As soon as you have a junior in there, they're going to be asking questions all the time, hopefully. So it kind of changes the environment of the team, which is actually a really important thing. Keeps your senior and intermediate developers accountable because they're going to be asked questions a lot. They're going to have to explain things, and they're going to have to understand how to explain things. And I actually remember one time when I was explaining something to someone, it was about caching or authentication, and as I was hearing the words come out of my mouth, I was like, well, that's how that works. Like, obviously I understood it well enough to explain it, but it wasn't until I actually put it into words that I was like, okay, I'm confident in my knowledge now. So it actually really helped your intermediates and your seniors in their own work. This one again seems a little bit subtle, but they bring a sense of excitement to the team. So when a junior is, well, a junior, they're either straight out of school, they've never had a career, maybe they've had 1 or 2 jobs or something. They're still kind of early on, they're still learning, they still have a lot of things ahead of them, and they're excited about it. And I'm going to be saying these things kind of in general. I'm not saying every junior is going to be like this. But they bring a sense of excitement which can kind of change things in a team. If you have a bunch of jaded people, bringing someone in who's excited about what they're doing can actually really change how people interact with each other on the team. They are malleable. You can use this for good or for evil, so please use it for good. But they're not going to have super strong opinions on the exact right way to do things, or like code has to be structured in exactly this way, use semicolons or not semicolons or whatever. You can just kind of teach them the way that you do things. You can also teach them to work 12-hour days, so don't do that. But it's a good thing to be malleable. And this one's a little bit weird, but the thing is your app could probably use them. And when I say app, I'm just talking about whatever software your company makes. There's probably some parts of it that need upkeep, that need updating, but that are actually kind of boring and that are probably going to be a little bit of a waste for your seniors and your intermediates to work on. So it's actually really good to have a junior work on that because it's a little bit of a stretch for them. So they're learning because that's a good thing for them. And then your app is actually also improving because there's like these sections that you don't really want your seniors to work on, and then they can focus on the things that are actually more important, or not more important, more complex. But the thing is, I don't think everyone should hire juniors, and I think that you really have to be honest with yourself about your team and about your company about whether you're actually ready to have a junior developer. So first of all, do you have people that they can learn from? Are there intermediates and are there seniors who have the knowledge that they can actually impart on your junior developer? Do these people have the time and the will to teach? I'm of the opinion that teaching should be a necessary part of any job in general, so you can make that a requirement for your developers. But if they're already overworked, if they're already so full of everything, and then you're like, oh, why don't a junior take some of the load off from them? That's not going to work. They need to be able to have some time and some will to actually teach. And then, are the juniors going to be making important technical decisions? I think it's not too uncommon when you're like a really early stage startup, you don't have a lot of technical people, that you get some interns to build your thing. And that's fine, like you need a prototype to like show to investors, and then you get money, and then whatever happens after that. But you're putting in a lot of technical debt by doing this. And if you're aware that you're doing that, that's just the decision that you want to make, that's fine. But if this is like a code base that you're planning to build on, you won't build on it. You're going to scrap it and you're going to rebuild it later. So don't, as much as you can help it, don't make a junior be your first developer. That's not a great thing. Junior developers are not just cheap labor. You have a responsibility to their growth. If you take away anything from what I say, take this away. And I know that it's very idealistic, and we all have to kind of look out at the bottom dollar and whatever. And yeah, there's going to be all sorts of reasons to hire or not hire a junior developer. No matter what, you have a responsibility to their growth. I think this is true for anyone. Doesn't matter if they're junior, senior, whatever. You have a responsibility to your employees. It used to be that you get a paycheck, but you give them a paycheck, maybe some benefits, they do the work for you. That was the exchange that happened. That's not really the case, at least in tech anymore. If all you're giving your developers is a paycheck and some benefits, they're probably not going to stay. If you're not doing anything to help foster their growth, they're not going to stay. And this is especially true, I think, for junior developers. It's especially important that you understand that this is a responsibility that you're taking on. So I'm not going to go into how to actually hire, like how to decide whether a junior developer is good, or a specific one is good for you, how to interview them, because I think that's really specific to your team, your product, where you're looking, how much money you have to give them. So if we just skip ahead, if you Google like interviewing junior developers, you'll get lots of really good hits that'll help you out with it. I think that's kind of a talk on its own. So we'll fast forward. Let's say that you hired someone. You hired a junior developer. So what now? First of all, I would say assign them a mentor, a specific person. So foster an environment of learning in the entire team. They should be able to ask anyone, and people should be happy enough to answer, but have one person be the go-to, have one person be the official mentor. This ensures that someone actually kind of has ownership of what the junior is doing and ownership of their growth. And it also helps the junior have one specific person to go to. They know that this is part of this mentor's role is answering the junior's question, and that helps them be less afraid to ask questions. And it's also a really good experience for the mentor. Maybe you have someone who's an intermediate dev who's looking to get into team leadership, getting into management. This is a really good first step for that, so it helps them too. So if you're a mentor, you're assigned a junior developer, what do you do? First of all, check in on them often. I would say in the beginning, several times a day. Just be like, hey, what's up? How's that ticket? Do you need help? A lot of people are afraid to ask questions. They're afraid to seem stupid. And so if you're actually making the effort to go in and say, hey, what's up? How's it going? It helps a lot. I would say at least twice a day, once in the morning and the afternoon, but more often if you can. Do honest code reviews and hold them to high standards. So they're going to make mistakes. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. All of us make mistakes. All of us write crappy code. Be honest in your code reviews. Say all the things that are wrong, but also make sure to keep on the praise. But I would say definitely don't be afraid to tell them the things that they're doing wrong, because they're going to, here's an example. Don't let them do this. They're going to do things that are going to be solutions, but they're not going to be perfect solutions. I love this. I saw this an hour ago, and I had to include it. So don't let things like that pass. Yeah, it takes a second. It takes a second.
That's cool, I like that.
Right? Yeah. At first I was like, what is it? Oh, it's a restaurant. I was like, oh, I see. I get it.
They were dyslexic, weren't they?
I don't know. don't let that pass code review. It works technically. Don't let it pass code review. Pair programming event. Pair programming is useful for, I think, any level. Any level of person within that and any combination of levels. So if you have two juniors pair programming together, that's actually really useful. They can kind of bounce ideas off each other. If you have a senior and a junior, there's a more obvious kind of this person's learning from this person. If you have two seniors, they're learning from each other. You don't even have to be a good developer to be helpful. Like I've pair programmed with people who weren't fantastic developers, and I'm in no way a fantastic developer either. But we did learn from each other. So I think pair programming is a really good thing to do at least occasionally. I know there's companies that actually exclusively do pair programming, like any code that gets committed is done by pair programming. I'm sure there's people here who have strong opinions on that. I think it's a good thing as a learning tool at least once in a while. Of course, don't ever give them answers. I mean, there's going to be times when maybe it's just some stupid syntax thing and it's easier to just tell them what it is rather than making them Google for everything. But in general, help them figure out the answer. Don't actually give it to them. Don't ever touch their keyboard. It's part of the previous one, but it's kind of a really nice thing that you can focus on. If you're ever pulling their keyboard and saying, like, here, let me just do it, don't do it. Just tell them what to type. So what kind of stuff should they do? Don't just give them all the boring stuff. I mean, give them a bunch of it probably, because like part of the growth process is when you're lowest on the totem pole is you get all the stuff that no one else wants, so that's fine. But don't just give them that. Give them slightly more interesting things too. Give them ownership of something if you can, something which is at their skill set or a little bit beyond their skill set. Probably not on the first day, but maybe a month in. Maybe there's like some class or some library or something that they can actually take ownership over. Having ownership of something really helps people a lot with their motivation. Find out what they're interested in and give them tasks related to that. So, of course, if you have, let's say, a financial services app and your junior is really interested in VR, you're probably not going to give them VR tests. But find things that they actually like, give them tasks that are more related to what they like, because motivation is everything, I think. I don't know if a lot of people will like this, but I think it's hilarious. Dijkstra's algorithm is the shortest, it's a way of finding the shortest length between two points. The point is motivation is everything. Expect good work from them. What we expect from people influences whether they can live up or down to that. So expect them to be good, expect them to make mistakes, but expect them to fix those mistakes, expect them to grow. That's important. Don't just expect them to be like some crappy junior. If you actually give them a higher expectation, they will more likely live up to it. Keep them accountable. If they're making the same mistake multiple times, if they make it once, you correct it. If they make it twice, you correct it. If they make it 3 times, point out the bigger picture. Fire them, yeah. No. But point out the bigger picture. You can say, like, hey, you keep making off by 1 errors. You need to be a little bit more careful when you write your loops. Show them Cloud Bleed or something, which, by the way, if you haven't changed your passwords in the last few days, like all of them, you should do it. Read about Cloud Bleed. It happened because of an off by 1 error. If you can, hire more than one junior developer at a time. This is good for several reasons, but the main one is actually just having someone else who is at the same level as you is a much more relaxing thing for both people. They'll be able to ask each other questions that they might be embarrassed to ask their seniors, or just kind of bounce ideas off each other. It's just it's a different experience. So if you're able to get 2 at a time or more, it's pretty good. And of course, there's some social pressure for improvement, because if you have 2 juniors and one of them starts advancing, the other one, like you shouldn't pit them against each other or anything like that, but we are all social creatures who kind of look at each other as ways of figuring out what we want, what we should be doing. So they will end up kind of having some subtle social pressure on each other to improve. Formally give and get feedback. If you're not already doing reviews, start doing them anyway, but especially important for juniors, I think. Check in after their first 3 months. Check in on what they're learning. what they want to be learning, what improvements they need to make, because I've been saying all these things about what you should be doing for the developer. They should still be a good developer, and they should be contributing to your team, so you have to be able to give them feedback on things that they need to improve, and you can also get feedback from them about things. If possible, you should do this with everyone. I'd say every 3 months. I know it's idealistic, and I don't mean that it needs to be some super formal thing. I worked at a company where we did that, where every you would have your one annual review that lasts like an hour and a half or whatever, and that goes into your employee file. But then we had these informal ones every 3 months, where it was just a chat. It was like half an hour. You're going with your boss, and you're like, what's been happening for the past 3 months? What do you want to see in the future? I think it's really useful. And it might sound like it would take a lot of time. Overall, it really doesn't. Like every 3 months sounds like a lot if you're used to only doing annual reviews, but it's really not that bad. It's half an hour every 3 months for every employee that's on your team. Even if you have a big team of 20 people under you, I don't know if 20 is big, I think it's big. Even if you have to do 20 reviews every 3 months, it's going to be scattered enough that it only adds an extra like 2 hours to your month. So I think to the extent that you can, honestly, check-ins are really important. Feedback is really important. And 3 months is a good time frame because it doesn't allow for quite enough time to get jaded about things. Like, if an employee is upset about something, they might like stew over it, and if their next review is like 6 months down the line, they're going to be real angry by that, or they will quit. But 3 months kind of lets you kind of nip things in the bud or start conversations earlier. But yeah, at least if you don't want to do 3 months, definitely do it at least annually. If you're not already doing this with all of your employees, just start. Okay, so we found junior developer, we gave them a mentor, they learned, they're doing a bunch of stuff, it's a year later, now what? Congratulations, you have an intermediate developer, and now you have someone who can mentor others. Now you can hire another junior developer and you can start a chain. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that like a 1-year developer always mentors a 0-year developer, like you need someone senior as well, but now you have someone who has had a good experience at your company, who is like kind of committed to your company, who is seeing the effort that you've put into them. And the best thing is, these are the people that are hard to hire. These are the people that you were trying to hire before when you're looking for seniors and intermediates, but instead of finding those because they're very hard to find, you actually just molded one yourself. It's only a year later. And now you can start the process again. There you go. You can find me on Twitter, or feel free to email me. I can't promise that I'll check my spam. I'll check my spam. Twitter is probably easier. Any questions? Okay.
Where does goal setting fit into that timeline?
Where does it fit in, like when you start doing it?
Or when you ask them what your goals for this position, or as an intern of various experience, what are your goals for this internship?
I would be shocked if most of them would have an answer for that. I think goals are something that you can help them figure out. And certainly goals are something that you should impart on them. Like if my expectations for you for the next 3 months are this, I think that's important. And yeah, it's important to ask what their goals are, I would say right away, but I would not actually expect them to have the answer to that. Beyond just like, I just want to learn.
In the absence of goals, have expectations.
Yes, always have expectations, and always make them clear.
I know it's really subjective, but do you have a general mental model of how many intermediate senior devs you have before you bring on another junior?
What was the question?
So the question is, subjectively, do you have a general mental model of how many seniors or intermediates you would need before you can bring on a junior? I think it partially depends on, okay, it's going to depend on a lot of things. Assuming that these, well, no, let's talk about what it depends on. It depends on how willing the ones that you have are to teach, how good they would be at teaching, how much work is required on your app. Like, if you're on a deadline, there's not going to be a lot of time for like spending time teaching someone. So if those things both work out, I would say 3 or 4. Like it doesn't have to be a big team. I would like at minimum, definitely not 2. Even like 3 or 4 is pushing it. Ideally, I would be thinking like 7. Really subjective. Anyone else? Yeah.
What's your experience managing expectations? I think for most of us, when we graduated school, we're all like, woohoo, we're gonna be building like new and wonderful systems. And usually we go to a company, they're like, well, this is the system nobody wants to work on. It was built like 3 years ago. You just, work on this while everybody else is doing, all the new and hot technology. I think that's most people do. Because usually I think like more people sort of do what they were junior devs are kind of cutting into. They might there'll be expectations. It would be such a whatever. I think a lot of us have gone through that. We're like, oh, we're stuck on this.
So the question is, how do you manage expectations when the job kind of ends up sucking because you're just dealing with legacy systems?
The reality.
The reality.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the main things would be to actually find the ways that this is a useful thing to learn, because we're always going to be maintaining, like every legacy systems are just legacy systems because they've been around for a while. So in 10 years, whatever cool hotness we're building right now is going to be a legacy system that someone else is going to be pissed off because they have to maintain it. So I think that there's actually a lot of potential to learn there as well, and I think that's a thing to focus on. But yeah, I mean, if they're like real disappointed, I don't know. At some point, it's just not actually a good fit.
So far we've interviewed and hired a lot of senior and intermediate developers. Now we're going on to jump the ship and get more junior developers. And I'm seeing a lot of difference in the level of skill set. And the first time I see a job or project done, I'm like, I'm not sure if I like this, but I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt or like giving them the level of that they are at. What are your tips for ourselves to manage our expectations when we're going through the interview process with junior devs?
So the question is how to manage expectations on, like during the interview process, your own expectations on what to expect from the junior devs. That's all right. What are you interviewing them on, I think, is the first question. Like what kinds of questions are you asking them?
Pretty much what kind of projects can they do in like front end, maybe a simple word sample.
Mm-hmm.
Or like something that they can do and show us that they have done something, as opposed to, oh, I completely new, I know nothing.
Right.
Then we're learning, we're interviewing them on their ability and willingness to learn, but then how do we gauge that compared to like some of the other options we have?
Right. Yeah. How do you gauge their willingness to learn? And I mean that's a tough one. There are questions you can ask. And again, it's going to depend on what type of work that you're doing. So when I was interviewing as a junior, like I did computer science, so some of the questions towards me were more technical. It wasn't about like, how do you do this in this language with the syntax? It was like, this is FizzBuzz, how do you do FizzBuzz? Which is actually a decent but boring test if you get them to code FizzBuzz. I mean, if you came to me, even after I graduated from comp sci, if someone came to me and said, so what can you make? I'd be like, Turing machine? But so, yeah, so my point is that's not a question that's going to give you useful information, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least certainly not on its own. A lot of people will work on their own projects, so like asking them things that they have worked on or would be interested to work on in the future, I think is a good thing to ask. Seeing how they handle not knowing the answer to something is important. Whether they just say, I don't know, which is a valid answer, or they try to figure it out on the go, or they say, I would Google this, which is also a valid answer. I think that's actually one of the most important things is seeing what their approach is. Seeing what their approach to problem solving is will give you an idea of how they're going to fit into your team.
Yes, well, I'm about to graduate and I'm trying to find a field that I want to go into, something that's interesting to me. And I'm guessing, not guessing, but the question I'm asking is, how should I be looking at the industry? How should I be looking at the industry? Because right now I have no real experience. I've just like played around here, played around there, but what should I keep my eyes on?
So the question is basically, as a junior, what should you keep your eyes open for? Well, first of all, keep playing around with things. Like work on your own projects, because when you don't have company experience, the thing that they're going to look at is, well, what have you done on your own? And it doesn't have to be fancy stuff or like successful stuff. They just want to see that you've built things. So definitely keep doing that. As far as not knowing what field to go into, or like kind of what focus, I didn't either for several years. I actually planned to stay in academia. I was going to do grad school, and then in my last year, I was like, no, this is terrible. So, and then I was like, I never planned to be in the industry at all. I had no interest in being a developer. That obviously changed, but so I had no idea what to do, and I just kind of took jobs. It was like my criteria was, will you hire me? So, and I learned from that. I learned in the first company that is maybe not the best way to find a job. And then in the second company, I kind of was more focused on the people who were interviewing me, like what my rapport with them was like, what their attitude was about it, and that was an incredible experience for about a year and a half that I worked there. So if you know like what type of thing you would like to focus on, then definitely like kind of steer it in that direction. But if you don't, it's very normal. It took me several years before I even kind of settled on web development, and then before I decided what I wanted to do with that. And for me, Interacton was like the top company that I wanted to work for, and I ended up getting a job there, but it took me several years before I knew that was going to be the case. So yeah, keep playing, keep making things, and focus on the people. The people are going to be the most important part in your junior job, I think. Anyone else? Yeah.
So I have one more question. So based on the previous question, so in the team itself, like I became a small project. So which one to do is better? I keep making small project, but I will like not do my project in a very organized way. And the other way, I keep making small projects, just keep my code really unorganized. So which one will be the most
Keep your code organized.
organized?
Keep your code organized, yes.
Organized.
That is more important than most things.
Yes.
That is more important than almost anything. Yeah. Yeah, comment things, write clean code, because the thing is you're not developing in a vacuum of just yourself, and even if you are developing in a vacuum of yourself, 6 months from now, you're going to forget what that thing was. Always keep things organized.
Yeah. Do you think for someone who doesn't have a computer science background and want to be junior developer or like a self-taught junior developer, does he or she have any disadvantage over a new grad from computer science or software engineering?
Sure. So the question is whether someone who's self-taught or I guess does a boot camp or something, when someone who didn't do computer science, whether they have a disadvantage over someone who did. In some cases, yes. There are some people who will only hire comp sci grads or who will only hire software engineers. So for some cases and with some companies, yes, that's going to be a disadvantage. A lot of places don't care. There is like if you're coming from a non-schooling background, you do have to prove yourself a bit more. You have to show that you have these projects. You have to show that you have passion in a way that maybe someone with a comp sci background wouldn't need to that extent. But I think there's a ton of people that I've worked with that I've seen through school who did not do computer science, who didn't do anything like that, and then ended up in it, and they are fantastic developers. Like I think we're slowly losing that stigma of like you must have exactly this schooling in order for it to be good. No, it's working. I just lost my password, and I'm holding this, and I can't type it. Yeah. So like in some cases it's going to be a disadvantage, but really nothing to fret about. I think, especially with like how popular boot camps are now, like those coding boot camps where you like go through 2 months and you become a developer. Like that's really common now. Yep.
As a junior developer trying to find a job, other than like looking at Glassdoor reviews or something, how do I ensure that, or like what kind of questions can I ask in the interview that will help me find a company that like knows what you just talked about, and I won't just get dumped into a place where I won't grow?
Right. So the question is, what kind of questions do you ask to make sure, as a junior, to make sure that you're going to be joining a team that's actually going to help foster your growth, right? I mean, you can ask about how many juniors they've had before, whether they stayed. Ask that more nicely, though. Don't phrase it like that. Yeah, like how long they were there. Ask if they have a process for onboarding junior developers. And I mean, a lot of stuff I talk about here is like very idealistic. Like most companies aren't necessarily going to do all of these things. you should try to find one that is going to do as many of them as possible. But like if they don't have an answer to this is how we onboard juniors, it doesn't mean they're not going to be good. Maybe they just haven't hired juniors before. But I think it's also just something that you're going to get a sense of during the interview, the way that you interact with them. I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but just the general vibe that you get from the people as you being a junior developer, like how they treat you, the kinds of questions they ask you, I think is gonna tell you a lot about how it works. I think also having more developers in the interview, if it's just you and the manager and you don't meet anyone on the team, that's not great. If they have other developers involved in the interview process, that's good because it shows that like they want input from the rest of the team and they want to see how everyone will work together. So I think that's also a positive thing. And you can ask the developers questions. Ideally, at some point, the manager will leave the room, and then you can ask the developers some questions that you might not have wanted to ask with the manager, like what are they like? What's it like working here and things like that. Do you ever work with hands? Stuff like that.
You know, one thing to ask about those training budgets, if they provide training.
Yeah. So another thing to ask about is if they have a training budget, like whether they're willing to put in money for training. And this is something that is for like intermediates and seniors as well. Like if you have a conference budget, like yearly, they're able to send everyone to one conference or something. That's a good thing. You're not necessarily always going to find that because companies aren't always going to have the money for it, but it's a good thing to know about. Yeah.
Last question for increasing that and for junior developers. Do you think there's benefit to kind of starting their own business or going to work, you know, in a startup where they're the only developer to start, kind of learning in that void, or go and learn and cut your teeth in the industry that you can only think about later?
I would say cut your teeth in the industry. So the question is, as a junior, what should you maybe start your own thing? I made what I consider to be a mistake of freelancing for the first 2 years after I graduated, and it was fine. But like, I didn't really start growing as a developer until after that, until I worked with a team, and I think that's really vital. And I mean, if you have some fantastic idea that you're like super passionate about, that you really want to work on, then go for it. And if the startup that you're looking at has no other developers, but you're really into what they're doing, go